talking to Rose again, which is awesome. She's doing so many things since we last spoke. Lots of things have changed and progressed, and you're definitely moving forward with focusing on what you're focusing on and building your community. So, Rose, give us a recap about the different places you're playing in at the moment, just to bring us up to speed.
Okay, so we are a co-founded Guardian South Australia. So that's where we started with supporting our children with the mask mandates that were in school. We had a real concern that they were stating that it was mandatory when parents actually had authority over that, and we were able to simply write in a letter and say our child is exempt from wearing a mask, because we as the parents have that authority to do so, but it didn't come across that way. So we're quite concerned about the parental consent. A lot of people are unhappy about it, obviously, because of the ill effects of wearing a mask all day, every day. So yeah, we came in and provided information, created support for people, created local community groups around that topic of having that parental consent and supporting one another.
And that really grew, didn't it? Like, your Guardians SA has got, how many people have you got a part of that community?
Oh, on Facebook alone, we got almost 12,000, and that's only South Australian residents who all feel the same way, which I think is a really, really great number to have. And then we also have our other socials like Instagram, and we just started on Twitter, which I'm still learning, but we're getting there.
All of
Yeah.
them. It's nice though, during that time, like when everyone's feeling alone, and then you've got this group of people in the same community, in the same state, that, you know, all coming together for the same thing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we felt it was really important just to keep it state-based. We do have a lot of people asking to come in from interstate. However, we want to keep it really SA focused. So if we have letters, template letters, action, you know, we know that everyone in the group is from South Australia, and we can have a good outcome from that. And then other
Yeah.
people's from interstate, other people from interstate can, yeah, join our other socials.
Yeah, great. And you've got a template we're going to talk about in a little bit. So beautiful Guardians SA, and then you've also got your own, you're a child counsellor.
Yeah, so I've been doing that for over 20 years, working
Okay.
with children. So I run Coaching Confident Kids. It's a home practice, which I really enjoy. I work with children from about 8 years onwards. And yeah, I'm also a mum of three. So I do have a passion for, you know, working with kids. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So cool. So now what's been happening? Where are you at right now? What's the focus at the moment?
So the focus at the moment is a bit controversial because we are focusing on
Everything's controversial at the moment.
it is on anti-bullying programs that are in schools. And what comes under the anti-bullying program is gender affirmation or gender ideology, which is a huge subject at the moment. And from our perspective, you know, absolutely everyone can identify however they want and express themselves however they want. What we're saying as parents, however, is that we still need to give parental consent as to what our children are exposed to, what information is being presented. You know, when we get permission slips coming home, you know, usually says something like, "Oh, your child will be participating in health. You know, we're going to cover this topic." And then you sign and you send it in.
And it generally sounds like a pretty basic subject, doesn't it? Like you said, health, and you're learning about, like, it
Uh,
sounds all above board.
Self-identity, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's all okay. But then when you actually call the school and say, what does that actually mean? Like, how is that then broken down, and how are you teaching that in the classroom? You find that it's actually a lot bigger, where they start going into a whole lot of different subjects about sexuality. And, you know, this is where we as parents need to decide, well, are our children at a developmental stage ready to hear this information? Does this align with our values? Does this align with our morals? How do we want our children to learn about this information? And like I said, you know, we are always inclusive. You know, I think one of the biggest things is that it comes under the anti-bullying. I haven't heard any major reports about bullying around that subject. There's bullying across the board. I mean, children face this, adults face this, and it depends on how we respond to that. But this is a topic that is particular to an anti-bullying program.
So they've put this learning about gender and everything under anti-bullying category. Oh, so that's the way they've got it in there.
Yeah, so and respectful relationships.
Okay.
So what does a respectful relationship
how they
actually
just slip
mean?
It in under...
Yeah, so what does that look like? What are you teaching our children? So for example, when my middle child was in year 7, I got the form. I was like, okay, and I thought, well, what does that actually mean though? And I messaged, I'm like, can you tell me what that means? And they sent me the curriculum outline, and they were talking about how to transition. And I thought, well, I know my child. I don't think that's a topic my child needs to learn about, because he's shown no expression in that way, and never talked about it in that way. I know my own child. I thought, well, does he need to learn about that? Because it's not something that's on his radar. So we pulled him from that. I thought, you don't need to participate. It's not something you need to learn, because it's not something that you're doing. And if you were to show interest at some point, then we'll have that discussion. But it wasn't on his radar at that point.
Firstly, well, 2 things actually. Let's go into the fact that the first thing that you actually contacted the school and asked them what the curriculum was about, because I think that's huge, and giving power back to the parents that they do have a say in what their children are learning. It is still their child. We've handed over our responsibility to the kids to some extent sometimes. So can we just talk a little bit about how you did that, and other parents give them the courage that they can do that too?
Well, I think we have a lot of faith in our school system, and we just assume that whatever's happening is going to be in the best interests of the child. Whereas, when they brought out that they had to wear masks, that raised a red flag for me. And I was like, well, that's not in the best interests of my child, of my children, for my own reasons. And parents can think, for or against that issue. But at the end of the day, as parents, we should have the choice as to what our children need to be doing. And it's the same concept here. We need to have that choice. So yeah, I think it's really important that we do sit back and not just sign everything so quickly. So we go, oh yeah, the school's doing this, and we sign it and we send it back. And sometimes we really need to just sit there and read exactly what we're signing and go, well, what lays underneath that? Because I don't think, they make broad statements. These are the topics we're talking about. Okay, what are the subheadings under those topics, and how are you going to be teaching that? What resources are you using? From where are you going to be using them? I mean, so there's an organization that goes into, well, they don't go into state public schools. The organization teaches the teachers how to present this information, and something about the A to Z of genders. And then there's a external organization that is hired to go into Catholic or independent schools, and they go in and teach a whole range of things. You can look at the Instagram and you see the content that's on there.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I find really important is what we are putting in our children's heads. Like, what are we seeding exactly? So, for example, there are children who identify differently. Okay, that's absolutely fine. We're inclusive of that if you want to identify a specific way. But then why does every child need to learn about the process of doing that? It's like if we have a child who's come from an abusive household, you would deal with that child and support that child. You wouldn't then bring that into a whole class lesson and talk about domestic violence or trauma that a child has been through, because it would have been in another child's radar. It's not something that they're dealing with. It's not something that they need to know about. And why would you tell people or tell children, well, this is something that you're going to be exposed to, when it's not in their reality? You know, we're meant to be going to school to learn the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s, and learn how to become ready to go out into the workforce and participate in society. You know, now it's more about morals and values, which are all very important, but it's getting into really nitty gritties where parents have differing views about this. And so I think it's really important that, you know, it seems to be like an opt-out at the moment. Like you get it and you go, oh yeah, okay, and sign. Whereas we really got to go, well, hang on, what exactly is it? I don't think my child's ready for that, or I don't agree with what that is at the moment. Maybe later I'll do that. So I'm going to opt out of that. You know, we've had some parents saying they didn't even get notification. So we have had a lot of parents contacting and sharing their stories. We actually just started, after 2 years, we finally developed the website, so www.guardiansa.com.au, because this topic is just so big. And I think that there's so much more behind it in terms of you can identify however you want. That's absolutely fine. But what the issue is that it's now being used as a normality, just like the trauma could be used as a normality, right? Not everyone's living that. Therefore, why do we all have to participate in it and learn about it? For example, one of the procedures that the Department for Education has brought in states that a child who identifies as another gender can play on that identified sports team, can use those toilets, can go into the change rooms. You know, so in being inclusive, we are now putting other children at risk. What if this 13-year-old girl gets her period and has to run into the toilets and has blood on her skirt? This is a reality. How are they going to feel when there's a biological male in their toilets, in their safe space? You know, going on camp, that a child can sleep in the dorm they identify with, but how is that safe? How are you going to monitor that? Because one of the things that I've been reading is that there is confusion, especially through puberty. So we're going through puberty. We're at this stage of development where we want a sense of belonging. And it's during this important time that they start teaching a lot of this information. So obviously there's already confusion. We're already feeling uncomfortable. We're smelly. Hair is growing in places we don't want it to grow. Think bits and pieces are growing that we're like, oh my goodness. You know, we're experiencing new sensations. Our hormones are all over the place. You start fighting with your parents more, you know, just everything's just so much more intense and hyped up. And we're going, well, you know, maybe if you don't want to experience this, here's an alternative option. So one of the things in this procedure is that the school can support a child in their transition. So they can change the pronouns. They can organize meetings. They can put you in connection with people who you need to be connected with. And this is without parental permission. Because if the child says my family doesn't agree, or I don't think my family is going to be supportive, I think there's going to be issues, then the school will go, okay, well, that's not safe for you. So without your parents' approval, we decide that we're going to assist you, and taking over that authority over the people who know and love that child more than anyone else. Like, I think that's a really scary concept. I think it's really, really dangerous.
And Rose, I think we need to stress this point that this is happening. This is not talking about it could happen and, you know, maybe. It is actually happening. It has been happening. And parents really need to actively engage in their kids' lives, and
Absolutely. I mean,
specifically their school life.
they've changed laws in Victoria where you cannot deny your child affirmation, and your child can leave your home. So you can't even say, you know what, I hear what you're saying. Can we wait until you're a bit older to discuss this once you've gone through puberty? Because I think it was 80% once they get through puberty go, oh, I'm actually okay.
That was a phase.
Yeah. It was the struggle, it was the hormones, everything. We weren't told that there was an option in our day, so it wasn't really considered, but people who identified, they knew, right? Whereas now it's like self-harm. Self-harming is not something that we talk about in a group, right? Because it's a copycat behavior. And this is why they're calling this a social contagion, because it seems to be going along the same way. And I feel that we are harming our children because the next step is hormone blockers. And hormone blockers in itself, there's just so much concern for this. An example we use is, okay, well, if a child was anorexic and they said, well, I identify as being obese, therefore you must do that. And we go, oh, okay, you're obviously really, really thin and you're harming yourself, your body's going to shut down, however you identify. So we'll go along with that. And yes, we won't eat in front of you. You don't need to eat food. And if you want liposuction, all right, So when we're looking at affirmation, it seems to be the first dysphoria that has surgery as an option. That's never been done before. But prior to that, our children are learning they can change their sex. We are binary. There are two biological sexes. One might identify as being a different gender. However, you will never change your sex. That's biology. So when we start injecting hormones, it changes you, where you will become dependent on Big Pharma for the rest of your life because of the changes that it's making. I mean, we've got
what are the stats?
So this is a form that we've got up on our website at guardiansa.com.au. This is a flyer. We just put together a little bit of information where you can go and look, and there are talking points here. And one of the things that's on here is that hormone treatment and surgery for gender dysphoria are processes that are irreversible and lead to long-term health issues. Issues include sterility, reduced bone density, stunted height, mental health issues, and a lack of sexual function. I think that one in itself is really important. Sexual identity is really important. And if you start putting hormones into a prepubescent body, they're never really going to experience sexual function. So does that mean they're not going to have an orgasm? Are you going to go through life never experiencing an orgasm? That to me is beyond wild. All right.
Well, is it also, and they're not willing, and they're not wanting to reproduce because they're not sexually inclined.
Well, they can lose that function. Yeah.
So then it stops our population.
And how can you consent to something that you have not experienced? So, I'm saying, if I go, okay, well, I'm a girl, but I think I want to be a boy. Well, how do you know you don't want to be a girl if you haven't gone through the process, if you haven't developed, if you haven't experienced that sexual gratification, or just being in your own self past puberty? How can you say, well, I don't consent to all of that when you don't actually even know what it is yet? You can own, I think if you go through a point and have that experience and then go, you know what, this isn't for me, and I feel like, I do want to transition, then okay, as an adult, at least 18, this is what you this is what you get to do. Our children cannot consent They cannot consent to tattoos. They cannot consent to driving. Yeah, they're not allowed to drive.
Drinking, smoking, but
To
they can change their
voting.
sex.
But you can change your sex. But you can take hormone treatment. But you can change your pronouns. But, you know, and the whole anti-bullying thing around that as well is, I identify as this, you therefore must identify as this, otherwise you're bullying me. It's like, well, I don't identify as being cisgendered, and yet you are enforcing that on me. I am a woman, and I find that offensive. So how does it not work both ways? So we're finding that children are getting in trouble at school. We had a year 12 student share her story with us. So you can see that on our website under SOS, which is Share Our Stories, where her friend said, I don't do pronouns, and he was suspended in year 12. I just find that so it's being enforced. It's that's bullying in
That's
itself. The
bullying.
anti-bullying
That's
program
bullying.
is bullying children. Like, I just find
School
that
needs to
really
go through the
bizarre.
anti-bullying.
Yeah.
And Rose, do you know the stats? I've seen some stats, but I'm not going to recall them. I don't know if they're accurate about what the percentage of children that do transition regret it.
Oh, well, I mean, there's a huge detransitioning movement happening at the
Yes.
moment.
Yeah, that's right.
I know it's massive. I did participate in one of those anti-bullying programs online forums to learn about what they're teaching our children.
Yeah.
And one of the statistics in there from the Trove was that 9 out of 10 children who identify as trans have suicidal ideation. So the push is that children are feeling uncomfortable, therefore let's transition them, and that will alleviate that discomfort. And yet 9 out of 10 of them are then having suicidal ideations. That to me says it's not working.
Yeah.
There's a bigger problem. I think it's also on this brochure about autism, how there's just such a high, the Irish Gender Service, over 50% seeking gender assessment have autism. You know, the La Trobe University actually does go through children who self-identified as having other issues, and it was over 60%. So why are we not, addressing that and going, well, what's this underlying issue?
Let's get to the root cause.
Before going to this extreme of saying, well, let's inject you with hormones that are going to affect you with bad health.
Yeah.
And that you can't really reverse. I mean, what's her name? Someone Cole. She's in America. She's detransitioning, and she's now been haunted by the LGBTQI group. So she's been bullied from them, and it's like, well, why isn't it about self-expression?
Yeah.
And
if it really was.
Yeah, and if gender doesn't matter, if it's a social construct, then why are we surgically changing our bits to look like the other sex?
Yeah.
It's a contradiction.
Sense. Yeah, 100%.
And it's a contradiction that is harming our children. I mean, we've got fantastic senators who are working on this at the moment, but we got Ralph Babbitt, Alex Antic. Actually, Senator Alex Antic put in a bill. He says, I'm calling the Parliament to support my Childhood Gender Transition Prohibition Bill 2023, which will ban hormone blockers and surgery as treatments for gender dysphoria for minors. Thank goodness. Thank goodness something's being done in this space, because we cannot reverse it. You cannot change it. You can stop taking it, but your voice is already lower, the hair's already there, top surgery may already have been performed, So there's all these concerns.
I don't think parents realise, and we haven't for a long time, that a lot of bills pass without us knowing about it, because the process to do it is they tell us in a roundabout way, but we don't actually actively engage and get the full thing. So bills are passing unaware, like you say, like in Victoria, that you are able to do these things behind the parents' back.
Well, what's concerning is that when they're having these health education or respectful relationship sessions in class, it leads to this, because this is what they're being told. This is like, there are all these options for you. This is what you can or can't do, etc. So that's the actual concern, because that is the foundation for the then changes that are going to be coming for your child, saying, well, I might want to change my pronouns. I know that you don't agree. Therefore, the school's going to support me. They don't need to tell you. And all of a sudden, your authority is gone. Your consent didn't matter. We have an SOS up on the website where a mother states that she had signed a form saying, I allow my child to opt out if they feel uncomfortable in relation to the sexual things that they were going to be learning. I think she was 13. They ended up putting on an M-rated movie. And the child was like, oh my goodness, she was so embarrassed. She felt really uncomfortable. She could see everyone else was feeling uncomfortable. And the teacher said something like, oh, don't worry, kids, you'll be doing this soon. Really inappropriate. And the parent went to the school. You can read it on the SOS. The parent went to the school and, said, well, I'm not happy with this. And they said, well, we can teach with whatever resources we want. And she said, well, no, you can't. And she gave them the information of what they're meant to be doing. They're the teachers. They're meant to know what they can and cannot do. But we are the parents, and we can override that and say, well, we don't want you doing that at all, because we know our children and we don't want them learning about this. So it's not, people may say, oh, this is being transphobic. It's not being transphobic. It's looking out for all our children. What I found this interesting, there's a petition going at the moment with Angela, who you've interviewed, to classify sexually explicit books. And I was at a meeting the other day, and one of the gentlemen didn't sign the petition because their grandson was now a granddaughter. And I was like, okay, but what's that got to do with sexually explicit books? I mean, what we're saying is children shouldn't have access to pornography. How does that relate? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, they're not
So I
sure.
was
They're just
quite,
confused.
well, I think there is a lot of confusion
Yeah.
for the children, and then for parents, and
Yep.
parents go, well, this isn't a big deal. But it's because this underlying foundation that they're teaching leads to other stuff. So it is therefore a big deal. It's definitely something we need to be concerned about. I have these in my car. They're available to download. So go onto the website, download them, print them, share them via email. They're great conversation starters. So I have them with me in the car, and I went to the butcher and the baker the other day, and I was like, oh, by the way, would you like one of these? We have concerns about gender affirmation in schools, and I had great conversations.
That's the
The
first
egg
step, isn't
shop
it?
the day before
Suppose.
that, so been
Everything.
picking up my fresh eggs, and no, like, absolutely, this is something that we're really concerned about. You're not the only ones. People send in their stories anonymously. Obviously we've got their details to ensure that it is a real story, but it gets posted anonymously, and then people get offended by that as well. I had an incident on Instagram where I posted what someone had sent me, that they were really concerned about the mitiog, which is made in the image of God in Catholic schools, that their child in reception was learning about same-sex relationships. And she wasn't prepared for her child to learn about that in reception, and pulled her child from that. And then I had
Religions
feedback.
are even
People,
changing tact. How long ago religion, you weren't allowed to learn about same sex because it was like bad and blasphemy to be, gay. And now it's like the hypocriteness within that as well is just
yeah.
obvious.
Well, yeah, I mean, from that, I have parents who are angry and going, well, my children go to Catholic school, and that's not what they're learning. Well, that's great, that your school, but all schools are different. All schools have different principles. We all follow the same Australian curriculum. We just use different resources. Some are restricted, some are not. Teachers, may can change the way that they teach it. I've got some teacher friends who refuse to teach it because they're so uncomfortable with it. And I'm glad that's been respected. But how much authority do teachers have in that? Would they be reprimanded for saying, well, no, I don't agree with it? Yeah. I don't know. And if they do just go along with it, even though it's against their values, and thinking, well, parents really need to have a better understanding of what we're teaching here. They're all questions that we are. That's about professional integrity. What do we do as teachers now? How do we let people know that there are concerns? Which luckily we're having a parent forum next year. So we've decided that we are going to hold a parent forum. I'll be organising that with another group called Flag on the Hill. And we're going to have a whole lot of guest speakers come out, and hopefully some senators, and really talk about this topic of parental consent, why it's important in this space. In Caloundra, this was really interesting. So Senators Babbitt and Malcolm Roberts went out there in Queensland because a school invited drag queens to perform for the primary school children and did not ask for permission. There were outraged parents how can you do that without our permission? Because obviously it's a foundation, right? We start introducing these concepts which can lead to harm, which can lead to physical harm.
This is where parents and adults, so that the teachers that are working in the system, that you've got to wake up, or I don't wake up, but really actively engage, because there's so much trust in these schools that they wouldn't do that. Well, this school did that. This school went and organised drag queens. So regardless if you liked it or not, they did it. So these are these schools you're trusting. And if you think it's not happening in your school, ask questions, because even that parent that challenged you, Rose, she's like, that's not happening in our school. Does she know that? Has she gone and asked the questions? Has she seen the curriculum? People need to actively engage, and this I bang on about this, and this is more me than I'm speaking for myself here, and looking into the history of the school system and the curriculum. And if you think the curriculum and the system is set up for your child, you're delusional. I've got a video up that says, the true intention of schooling. I'm not saying there's good people in there. There is good people in there, but you really need to get involved. People really need to, like you said, ask questions and find out.
Even when you do ask the question, sometimes it's really hard to get the answer. My youngest is in year 5.
To tell you everything you need to know that you can't even find out.
Yeah, and I got the form home. This external service provider was a different one. Will be coming in and teaching your children about this topic. And I wrote back and said, before I sign the permission slip, can you please tell me what the topics are? Yep, these are the topics. Okay, well, what does that mean though? I want to know what this specifically means. I think it was something about gender something. And I kept going back and forth. I'm like, yeah, but you haven't answered the question. Like, what is in the curriculum? What are these external service providers that you've got coming into the school to teach my child?
What are they going to say to my child?
What are they teaching? It took a lot of back and forth, and then I just said, please tell me specifically, are they teaching about gender ideology? Are they teaching my child about how to transition? Are they teaching my child about hormone therapy? Are they teaching my child that they can change their pronouns? What are they teaching? And then it came back, oh no, not in this year. So I'm like, okay, so I'm assuming that's coming in year 6 or year 7.
We're priming them. We're going to prime them though.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'll just take him out like I did the other.
Can you explain
my
that,
first didn't go through this. My first child didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to be this specific. My second did. My third most definitely. Yeah.
I've amped it up lately. Can you explain what that means when you say I'm going to take them out? Because I feel like talking to parents, they're like, I don't want my kid missing out. I don't want it to, it's part of the conditioning that we can't speak up because we want to be part of the
Mm.
collective. So what happens
Well,
when you take them out? Like, what does that look like?
I just organised something else for them to do. Like BTN, Behind the News, is a, for those who don't know, is like a news segment for children. I remember doing it when I was in primary school. It's been around for that long. But they were showing a lot of stuff about pro-vaccination, pro-mask, the war in Russia, and I was like, oh my goodness, my eldest was worried that he was going to be called into war. So imagine what it's doing to a child. And I was like, I'm not happy with my child getting that information from school. I will discuss these issues with my child at home. So I pulled him from BTN, which means that during that time he finished work, he read a book, whatever it was that he had to do,
He
go
could
for a
just go
walk.
like sit in the library, or he could just be
Yeah,
in another
yeah.
classroom.
And he
Yeah.
wasn't the only one. He wasn't the only one that's taken out of BTN, which I'm really happy about, because it shows that there are other like-minded people
But
who are
even if
really
he was,
concerned.
this is the thing, that even if he was, like, it's still your child, and you get to, with your child, decide what is best for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have no idea how any of this information is really influencing our children. And I learnt that when, like I was saying, when the Russia war was massive and people talking about it. And when he turned to me, I still get teary thinking about it. And he said, like, yeah, we've been talking about it with his friends, like, would we be called to war? Is this something that we're going to have to do? And I was just like, oh, babe, and absolutely not. Like, and the fact that you have this thought, I'm sorry that even got to this point that you had to have that thought. And I should have spoken to you about this earlier. I didn't realize how
You
much
don't
it was
know what's going on at
influencing.
school.
Well, what they're watching on TikTok, what they're watching, what they're talking
Oh yeah,
about.
social
You know,
media.
we don't have access to that because there's so much social media, etc. So I was not prepared for how concerned he was about that. And so, I dropped them home and I cried the whole way home. I thought my child was in fear. And that broke me. I don't want my children in fear. I want my children to have hope and love and know that they can better society. And it's really hard when they're going to school and other seeds are being planted. I mean, now, for example, they're bringing in that toxic masculinity stuff. I have 3 boys. And the government is funding, I think, over $3 billion or 3 million to run programs in community centres and things like this to teach your child, teach your son how to be a better man. What does that mean?
Who? Oh yeah.
Who designed that? What is your
Archetype that they're
definition of a
basing that off?
man?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm quite secure in the way my husband and I are raising our children. Do I want external assistance? No. If I need it, I will go look for it. Um, but it's kind of invading. It's invading our space. It's invading our family unit. And that's something we definitely don't need.
But
Unless your child is at risk, unless there is harm happening to a child, there should be no interference. And I've done this for a very long time. I've made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reports, because there have been children I've been working with that are at risk. How many have we responded to? Doesn't even go on, very, 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 very minimal. It needs to be very extreme for the government to get involved. And yet here we are, they're getting involved.
yeah, they've amped it up big time.
They're lumping all our children into one. They're going, well, obviously rape occurs, so therefore we're going to talk to all the boys about rape. Well, that wasn't probably even a thought.
Well, a lot of them wouldn't even know what it is, which is
To somebody
amazing.
before. Well, dependent on
But
the
they've heard of
age,
it. Yeah, depending on
wasn't
the age,
something, yeah.
yeah, they've heard of.
So why are we planting these seeds? Why are we saying oh, well, this could happen, therefore we're going to, address all of you. It's like, well, hang on, how about taking those children who are at risk? What about taking those children who have experienced trauma and putting all that funding to them? Help them, assist them, let them know that there is a better version and not the one that they've grown up in. Instead of bringing everyone back down to that level and then going, yeah, and don't do it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
None of it makes sense. But it had to
Anyway,
get
I'd
this
love.
obvious. It had to get this obvious, I guess, for people to actively participate. It's been happening since day dot. The system was set up to create soldiers and slaves in our employees and consumers, and now it's just even encroach more on the family values. So it's shit what's happening, but we can make it better. There is so many good people out there like you that are doing great work, and just encouraging people to ask questions, encouraging parents to actively participate, ask questions. The more parents that are asking questions, the more pushback there is.
Absolutely. It just takes a couple of parents. It just takes a couple of parents. And what are they going to say to you? No. If they say no to you, then I'll be very worried. So it's like, okay,
Keep
well, no, you
asking.
don't have a choice. I'll be taking my child out of that school. Like, what do you mean I don't have a choice over my own child? It's not comprehensible. So yeah, we really need parents to be more vocal and to represent their children. They are our dependents. We are their guardians. It's because they are underage. We are here to guide them. So let's do that together. Let's not be afraid of going into the school and questioning and asking them. So, download the flyer, go to our website. It's under the Original Gender campaign, where you will find the flyer to download. You'll find the SOS, which is share our stories. We've got a few stories up there. I've got to put a few more that have come through up, and share your own. So we can start letting people know. These stories will then be accessible to our politicians to say there is a major concern. These are some of the things that are happening in our society. We got a template letter written by an ex-judge and current barrister stating that my child will not be participating in gender affirmation or gender ideology in schools because of certain reasons. And there's links. So, binary.com, GenSpect, there's all these other links that you can go to and find out more information. There's an amazing father in Canada called something Bill. Anyway, he's Billboard Chris, Billboard Chris. He just walks around. He's got 2 daughters and he's really worried. And his arguments are absolutely brilliant. And I like watching him and learning from him and going, well, this is really incredible what he does. And most importantly, we've also got, register your interest for the parent forum. So when we actually set the specific date in February, you'll get an email and be notified to come along and join us and, get some more resources and tools. Safe Schools was eradicated from our schools at one point. What I've discovered is that they've just renamed it under another anti-bullying campaign. I want us to all be able to get together and, go, okay, we can do this. If enough parents do not consent and pull their children from that class, they won't be teaching it. It will be very minimal children that they'll be teaching it to. So we do have the power to change that foundation and say, no, as parents, we have the authority and we get to decide what is appropriate and what is not.
100%. Well, the schools don't exist without your kids.
Yeah.
So if parents aren't happy and you're taking kids out of classes or out of schools don't exist. So parents get to say what goes on, and
Yeah.
you've got the numbers. We've always known that we have the numbers.
Yeah.
We are the people. We are
That's
the humans.
right. Yeah. So
So
hopefully people get on board and head over to our website and
I'll leave all the details below.
sign up.
So.
Yeah. And be more involved and share your thoughts. Thanks.
Definitely. Oh, that's fantastic. Ask some questions. I'll put all the resources below. Get involved. Just participate. Just actively participate. Start asking questions at your schools. There's letters there that Rose has got. So she made it super easy. And if you've got any questions, they can contact you via the website, Rose.
Yeah.
Is there? Yeah. Great. We'll do this. I'm excited because people like you and other parents are going to come on board, and we're going to just create something better for the kids, where
Yeah,
they feel safe
absolutely.
and nurtured. Yeah.
Yes. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for the chat, Rose.
Okay, Benita.
Bye.
Bye.